Good afternoon. I thank you in advance for your attention for what I'm about to say. My role in Ciro medical practitioners is to provide diagnosis and therapeutic recommendations for all neurodivergent children and usher in a new pavement for domestic research. Autism Spectrum Disorder is a neurodevelopmental disorder whose symptoms emerge early in life or later in life. They present in multiple contexts and persist over a person's lifespan. It is a mysterious disease with riddles and puzzles on every level of its defining tiers, from the cause, the symptoms, the signs, the diagnosis, the investigative schedule, the treatment, and the prognosis. Diagnosing autism requires extensive clinical expertise, training, as well as a focus on the differential diagnosis. The diagnostic process is particularly complex, given that the symptoms overlap with other mental disorders and the high rates of co-occurring physical and mental concerns. For example, 54% of adults and children with autism have an anxiety disorder at any given time. Despite the progress made by science to define this disease, there's still so much of its pathogenesis that eludes us. In fact, there is a growing body of literature that is questioning the foundational assumptions that construct autism and ASD. The rates of ASD diagnosis has expanded enormously in the recent decades, penetrating everyday mainstream clinical practice and culture. During the 1970s, it was reported that 1 in 2,000 children were diagnosed with ASD. By 2000, it was 1 in 150. In the latest report by the CDC, it states that 1 in 40 children have ASD. That is a 4,500% increase in the prevalence in just 50 years. Of this, a recent study in the Western Cape has estimated that 1 in 10 children in public schools alone on the spectrum. Genetic and brain imaging studies have failed to identify any specific replicable differences, abnormalities, or biomarkers. In fact, based on scientific evidence, what we're calling ASD has no characteristic identifiable and measurable differences between ASD and comparable population. And I say this in the face of the contrasting evidence for ASD. So for every person that is brushed with this arrow of ASD, for every person raising a neurodivergent child without understanding what they're navigating, for every person without words to explain what they feel and what they see in a scientific way, ASD, autism, neurodivergence, it's all very real, despite the lack of material and genetic evidence. So we are left with observational and questionnaire-based tests that do not provide physical data on the inner functionings of the body, much like a blind surgeon operating with another's eyes and hands. But it's all not hopeless. The Autism Diagnostic Observational Schedule, which is the ADOS tool, is used for diagnosing people on the spectrum because it is a semi-structured, standardized measure of communication, social interaction, play, imagination, and the restrictive repetitive behaviors. It was published in 1989 with several updates since then. It is used in clinical and research settings and is considered the gold standard of measurements for patients with ASD. Fortunately, Ciro Medical Practitioners is equipped with an ADOS-trained physician who is able to not only diagnose, but offer opportunities for patients to participate in cutting-edge research relevant to our African context. Our aim is not only to study the causes and the pathogenesis of the disease or diagnostic behaviors, which I explained to you is a mystery, but to uncover the enigma surrounding the treatment and the prognosis. ASD is not someone else's problem. I repeat, ASD is not another's problem. We are moving into a world where everyone is bound to be interacting with, employing, or marrying people that are on the spectrum. Therefore, I believe and advocate that ASD is positioned to be the next global phenomenon and should be put on the same attention scale as that is global warming. Why? Because 10% of children with autism regress, 10% improve, and 80% remain the same. 70% of autistic children have mental health problems. Data from Sweden indicates that autistic adults with no intellectual disability are 9 times more likely to commit suicide, with data from the UK suggesting that 2/3 experience suicidal thoughts. 38% of autistic adults live with their parents. 17% are in residential care. The Winterbourne View report found that people with learning disabilities and autism are admitted and institutionalized unnecessarily in inappropriate settings, distant from their families and their homes. In addition, they are given inappropriately high levels of antipsychotics and sedatives. The Molsar's report demonstrated that there is an urgent need to investigate unexpected deaths in those with autism and learning disability. This is a humanitarian crisis. Why is this happening? One of the prime reasons is that autistic people do not receive a diagnosis until adulthood, with many not coming to a diagnosis at all. This leaves them unrecognized, unsupported, and vulnerable to abuse and poverty. 20% of autistic adults are employed, with 79% of them wanting to work. Those lucky enough to get employed are on the non-upgradable sliding scales and are paid substantially less. 1/3 of the 16 to 24-year-olds with autism are not in school, and if they are fortunate to receive an education, they remain alone and unproductive. Now, if you're just thinking that I'm highlighting another group of people that is a burden to society, to our already broken society, am I asking for pity for a population that is not going to add any value to our growth and our evolution as a community? No. So I'm going to close with this. Research from 2016 by Bernard J. Crespi actually suggests that autism is a disorder of high intelligence, as the number of recent studies have found a positive genetic correlation between autism genes and the measures of mental ability. This research indicates that alleles for autism overlap broadly with the alleles for high intelligence. Evidence indicates that autism and high IQ share a diverse set of convergent correlates, specifically a large brain size, fast brain growth, increased sensory and visual spatial abilities, enhanced synaptic functions, increased attention focus, high socioeconomic status, more deliberative decision makings, profession and occupational interest in the engineering and the physical sciences, high levels of positive assortative mating. So autistic people also do better on the Raven matrices, a classic intelligence test in which subjects use analytical skills to compete on ongoing visual patterns. So according to research by Isabel Soler et al. From 2009, autistics were on average 40% faster than non-autistics on the Raven standard progressive matrices. 23% of them were faster than the non-autistics on the figurial scales, and 42% were faster than non-autistics on the analytical scales. A study by Michelle Dawson et al. From 2015 also showed that autistic people scored on average 30%, in some cases more than 70% or higher on these scales, compared to the WISC-3, an intelligent test which is used for children between the ages of 6 to 18. So although 1/3 of autistic children of the study would be considered in the range of intellectual disability, according to the WISC-3 scales, only 5% would be judged according to the Raven matrices. This also suggests that some of the mainstream intelligence tests do not fully capture the capabilities of the autistic mind. So if you're feeling confused by this, welcome to the club. A very special club. One that I hope that more will join. Ciro medical practitioners hope to stand out as a center of excellence with progressive ideas on how to address the full scope of ASD, not just in South Africa, but the rest of the world. The vision does not see ASD as a problem, but as an opportunity to diversify our approach to neurotypical and neurodivergent individuals. We need more than global campaigns for awareness of ASD and autism. We need to start finding answers to these difficult questions surrounding autism. The leadership at Ciro is what is going to set us apart in the progress of demystifying ASD. I feel encouraged and I'm hopeful that I'm addressing forward-thinking people that recognize the value that people with autism have to offer. Hopefully, today commences a journey when all in South Africa and Africa learn how to benefit from this largely untapped pool of talented people living among us. Thank you.